Okay, a few things about today. Feel free, if you have questions, to hop on the microphone and ask them. We're not a very big group, so I think we can do that. If you are not talking, though, I would ask that you keep your microphone turned off just to cut down on the background noise. If you would feel more comfortable asking your questions in the text chat, that is fine. But keep in mind that when I'm doing the live demonstration part of the presentation, that requires me to be in the application or in Blackboard itself while I'm showing you, so I won't be able to see questions that pop up in the text, but once I switch out of that, I can address the questions. I will try to occasionally pop back just to see if there are questions, but sometimes that doesn't happen. But again, I would encourage you to please ask questions if you have them, because chances are if you have a question, somebody else also has it. So help everybody out. All right, today what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking a little bit about accessing our Ultra Gradebook. For those of you who are new, this will just show you how to get there. And for those of you who have been working in the original course view, this is going to show you some of the changes that have happened as the results of the Ultra conversion. There are some new features available. How the overall grade is calculated has been changed. We'll talk about that. Overall grade now is percentage based only, but there are a few workarounds if you are a points type of person. Also, we will talk about calculations and some of the more common workarounds that instructors like to use, and hopefully at the end we will have some time for questions. But again, as I keep saying, feel free to hop on the mic and ask questions during the presentation if you do have them. All right, so before we get started, are there any questions? No? Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna move on. All right, so the gradebook has changed. Although it still operates the same way, it's just a little different. In the Ultra course view, you have a couple of different options. One of the new features in the Ultra course view with the gradebook is that you can switch from either a list view or a grid view. One of the things I like about that is that the list view sort of is just a list of all of your available assessments, where the grid view is more like that spreadsheet view that you're accustomed to seeing in a gradebook, that has your list of students and then all the assignments laid out in a nice grid. But to toggle, oops, let me grab this. But to toggle between the two different views, you need to click these icons right here. This one with the lines is the list, and this checkerboard will take you to the grid view. Now, right next to that are the download and upload icons. This is where you're going to go if you need to download your gradebook. You may need to download your gradebook, say, to keep a record of it. You may want to do it because you're planning to make some major changes in your course and you want to make sure that you don't lose any of the information that students have already submitted as far as assignments or assessments go, just to be on the safe side. Another reason might be that you would want to work offline grading. If for some reason you didn't have access to the internet, I don't know where you would be that would be happening, but I'm sure it's possible. And then right next to that is this gear icon. And the gear icon is what you click to open the gradebook settings. And in your gradebook settings, it'll be a slide out panel. It slides out from the right. And this is where, or this is the place you're going to want to go to get to things like your grade schema. This is where you're going to adjust that. You can get to your student performance alerts, adjust those. You can, this is where you will go to assign automatic zeros, which we will talk about a little more in a minute. Grade categories, rubrics, and overall grade notations. Now, a quick word on automatic zeros. This is a new feature in Ultra that allows you to assign zeros automatically to any student who has not turned in a assessment by the due date. Now it's optional. You don't have to use it, and you can turn it on and off in the middle of the semester too, if you'd like. But one nice thing about the automatic zero is that it does help students get a better idea of where they're at in the course, because the way the grading works in Blackboard is that it is calculated based on the points that students have turned in. Okay, I'm hearing slides are looking very small. You may want to increase your screen magnification if you can. I've got these kind of maxed out. It'll be a little easier to see when I am doing the live demonstration. So I hope that's helpful. But anyway, like I was saying, the automatic zeros, because grades are calculated based on the assessments, or excuse me, the amount of points that the student has turned in. If there are outstanding assignments that are late, that have not been graded, they won't be reflected in the grade. So for example, if a student starts and does the first 4 assignments and gets A's, and then misses the next 4 assignments but doesn't have zeros assigned, when they check their overall grade, they're still going to see that they're getting an A. So this is just a way to sort of make it a little easier for you and a little better for the students. But again, this is something that's optional. It's not for everyone. You also, this is, like I said, this is where you would go to add grade categories. We'll talk about that a little more too, but there are several default categories, but you can also add your own. And then you can also create rubrics in the settings panel. One thing too is that this is where you'll go to put an overall grade notation in, which is something that is very rarely used. But if you had a student, for example, who had to withdraw for whatever reason, this is where you would go to make that notation and assign it to your student. So moving on. Okay, one of the new things in Ultra is this student list view. And what is nice, and this is only when you're in this list view, so you'll see you've got gradable items and students. When you first hit the list view, it will show you your gradable items, but you can also convert it to a list of your students. And what that does is that's where you can come to see their overall grade, but also this is where you can come to find their date of last access. So if you have a student who needs to get an incomplete or is failing the course, you need to put their date of last access in MyNIU before you submit your grades. So that's where you're going to find that. This is also where you can come to add accommodations or message specific students. You do that by clicking these 3 dots over here. Sometimes it's called a kebab. So those are some added features in this list view. And you can also edit your submission settings from here. Accommodations are added now not by assignment or assessment as they were done in original. They are now added to a student, so that once you have added an accommodation, it will apply to all the assessments in your course. So for example, if a student gets extra time on tests, that is where you would go to add that. Also keep in mind that there is a search box here. So if you have a large class with lots of students, that's going to be very helpful. All right, so before I move to talking a little more about the overall grade, I want to pause for a second and ask if there are any questions. Yes, let me go back here. Yeah, this date of last access tells you the last day that that student has accessed your course in Blackboard. Good question. Thank you very much. All right. So another thing, well, I'm sorry, did anybody else have another question? Okay, good. All right, another thing that has changed in the Ultra course view with grading is that overall grade is calculated using percentages. And you will see in your either your list view, which is kind of this one down here. I know this is a little busy slide, or in the grid view, right? You'll see this overall grade category or item. And if you click on that, then that will open the overall grade panel. This is just kind of the top right. And I'm showing you that because in order to adjust the parameters and set kind of your grading percentages, you'll want to click this calculation details up here. And then what that does is takes you to the calculation details page. You'll see if you want to go back to overall grades, you would click this arrow here. But what that does is on this page, right, you have a list of all of your work. And what you'll see here is going to depend on the view you select. So there are two possibilities. You can select either category view, or I should say category weights, in which you give weight to each one of your categories. So in that case, you're going to want to make sure that all of your assignments are correctly categorized. The other option is to grade items, in which case you will weight each individual item. Now, weighting individual items is a little more complicated because that requires a lot more math on your part. Generally, if you're using categories, you're going to have just a few categories that you can assign large percentages to. But if you're weighting items in your course, especially if you're weighting each individual homework assignment and stuff, that's going to be quite a bit more weighting that goes on. But no matter what, your percentages have to total 100%. If it doesn't, it's going to shoot you a warning and ask you to correct it. All right. So a little more about calculations. That we just talked about our overall grade calculation, but you can create other calculations in your gradebook. The reason might be that you say want to use total points for determining grades. Okay, if that's the case, as I said, Ultra does want you to use percentages, but there is a workaround using a calculation, so you can use total points. One of the things about total points is that if you want to use, or if you want to give extra credit, you are going to have to use total points for your final grade calculation, simply because you cannot add, like if you add the extra points or the extra credit column as an item, that's just going to be included in your grade calculation. So those points are actually going to be extra credit. Another reason for a calculation might be you want to show performance to students or see performance of students in a particular category. Again, these are pretty easy to do. You're just creating a calculation that takes all of the items in a particular category and totals them up. You can also use this to say assign or combine the grade for separate assessments on a larger project. For example, you know, a student may be writing a research paper and then presenting the findings. You may have different rubrics for each of those phases of the assignment, and so you can use a calculation to combine them in the gradebook. All right, before I move to the next item, did anybody have questions about calculations? Yes, Shenar, go ahead. Am I pronouncing that right? You can go ahead and hop on the mic and ask a question if you'd like.
Yeah, could you please explain one more time, if you don't mind, how to add extra credit?
Okay, I'm actually
Because
adding something.
once we set up the overall grade, it's hard to add any extra credit if we assign to students.
Actually, that's something I'm going to talk about in just a minute.
Okay,
So if after I go over it, if you still have questions, please let me know. But we are
sure.
going
Mm-hmm.
to cover that in just a second, or
Okay,
just a few minutes.
cool.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, don't hesitate to ask if you have questions. Okay, so just quickly, before or to add a calculation, all you're going to do is hover your cursor either in list view. What you do is you hover between items to pull up this plus icon, or in the gradebook grid view, you would hover again between columns for the plus icon, but you're going to click that plus icon to bring up this menu, and then select add calculation. All right, and what that will do was it will take you to this calculation page. Now you can see this is the blank right here is sort of where you're going to form your calculation. Up here at the top, okay, you're going to name your calculation. If you scroll over up here while it's live, and I'll do this, but you'll see a pencil icon pop up here. It does want you to name your calculations. Coming down here, you've got a box here where you can select the schema you want to use. You can also enter the description. And then this is kind of important here, this validate function. That's something that when you create a function, you can click that to see if it's valid. It will not let you save an invalid function, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're creating it and you want to check it to see if it's good, you can just click validate. But these two boxes here are where you're going to be doing most of your work. The top one is the functions and variables, which is where you sort of select which functions you want to do. And then below that, you have your operators, so you can decide if you're going to add, subtract, etc. You can get pretty complicated with this. I'm not going to get very complicated today. I'm just going to show you some simple calculations. All right, so when we do our live demonstration here, I'm going to show you how to create a total points column. Then we're going to show you how to drop low score, and finally how to create an extra credit column. So if you will give me just a second, I need to switch over to the live presentation. So give me just a moment. Let's see if I'm right. Hope we're in the right spot here. No, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. See if I get this time. Oh, man. There we go. Okay. All right. Is everybody able to see this? All right. Looks like you can. All right. Thank you. Keep in mind that it is difficult for me to see the text chat at the same time that I'm demonstrating here. So if you do have a question, please feel free to open your mic and ask it. But here we have, this is just one of my shells that I use to experiment with. And for those of you who are familiar with the Ultra Course View, which should be all of you, you'll recognize this. Up here along the top, of course, are how we navigate through our course. And this is our grade center icon or our gradebook icon. So obviously the first thing I want to do is click that. And as you see, this does take me to a list of my gradable items. One of the things here, right, is that on this list, you can see a lot of things. You get a lot of information. You have the due date here, and you also have the status, which can tell you if, for example, if all of the grading is complete, you will have this lovely little complete with the green check mark. But if you have items to grade, it's going to show that to you as well. And something that's different from original is that now when you grade assignments, it doesn't automatically post the grades right away. It waits for you to say when you want to post the grades. This is nice because this allows you to just sort of grade assignments as they come rolling in. And then you can release them all after the due date or something like that. It just creates, I think, a little cleaner experience for everyone. But it does add an extra step for you because you do need to remember to post the grades. Fortunately, they have this nice big friendly tab for you to do it. So it's very easy. Also over here, and like I said, this kebab here is where you're going to come to modify options for this particular item. I'll show you quickly the student list. If you click here, that just brings you over to the student list that we talked about. Again, if I want to add accommodations, I click the kebab. And then back to the student list, and up here also, here is my grid view. Just wanted to let you see that. Okay, so the first thing, and I'm gonna move back to the grid view just because I like it a little better. So the first thing I want to do is create a total points column. Okay, so to do that, I need to decide where I want it. I'm going to put it right here at the beginning because I'm going to say, let's just say we're going to use this for our overall grade. So all I have to do is hover between the columns where I want my item to appear, click the plus icon, and I'm going to click Add Calculation. What that does is that opens my calculation window, and the first thing it wants me to do is name it. So I'm going to call this total points. Keep it from to keep it simple. Also note, and this is true with everything in the Ultra Course View, when you create it, it defaults to hidden from students. This allows you to add items and work in a live course without having to worry about showing students material before they're before they need to see it, or letting them see an assessment perhaps before it's meant to be available, things like that. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select my grade schema. Obviously, I want points this time. I'm just going to say, put in my final description here. I'm going to go final grade, just to make an extra descriptive, but that is, of course, optional. And then to create my total, I have to come down here to my functions and variables. And as you may have guessed already, I'm going to click total. What that does is that puts the function here on my canvas. And the next thing I need to do then is decide what this total is going to be. Okay, to do that, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to click this triangle. Whoops, didn't open it up. And what that does is it gives me a lot of options, right? I can choose to total one of my categories. Okay, I've got a lot of categories that I've created. All right, so if I wanted to have a category, let's see, here's my homework category. If I want to total all my homework, all I have to do is click that, click out of here, and you know, if I come up here to validate, it tells me I have a valid expression. Okay, all that's doing is giving me a total of my category, my homework category. Okay, let's say I don't want to total the category. I want to total up a few different items. If you scroll down below the categories, you'll get a list of all of your coursework that you can also stick in your total. You can click as many of these as you want. Same with the categories, and it's going to list these along. One thing that you do need to be very cautious of is that if you add, say, a category, right? Let's say I add my homework category, and then I come down here in my coursework and add one of my homework assignments, that will essentially be adding points twice. So do be cautious when you're doing this, and make sure that you are not, in essence, doubling up on the points for students. Another thing you can add in your totals is calculations. So for example, if you have a couple of calculations that you need to total up, right, to add as part of your final, let's say my earlier example of the paper followed by the presentation of findings, you would come down here and check that too. Okay, that's a pretty simple and straightforward way to total up your assignments. Once you've got everything you want in there, all you got to do is click save. It checks the expression again. And then if you come back out to your grade center, now you'll see that you've got this total points column. Okay. You'll see this slash here. That just means it's not visible to students right now. I should have changed that, but that's simple enough to change. If you want to modify your calculation, all you gotta do is come in here and click edit, and that'll bring you back to the calculation page. All right, I'm gonna pop back over here to see if there are any questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a good explanation. Thank you for that, because I really didn't know about that. But before going to that calculation, should we create like assignments first in this page, the gradebook page, over like you showed how to create assignments, right? Like add items, sorry. So
yep.
Then it will show up in the second screen that you showed, right?
Yeah, and actually, I do believe if you, for example, if you're using categories, that would allow you to add, like, for example, extra homework assignments, and they will be included in that homework category calculation. Mm-hmm. However, if you're calculating using individual items, then yes, if you add things, you're going to have to go back in and add them to your calculation after you've added the item. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I have one question about the attendance. How can we add attendance? We cannot, we should set up overall grade first and then assign attendance points, because it automatically assigns 100 points, even if we try to.
Yeah, that's more of a thing where you can deal with it in the weighting. That's one of the things we do is, you know, it uses percentage points, so you can make your attendance worth as much or as little as you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for example, we add attendance, we give 15 points for the attendance, but it doesn't allow us right away set up 15 points. It just gives you only 100 points. So I emailed earlier last semester to the CITL,
Okay.
but nobody answered that. I still
Okay. You know what? I apologize for that. Why don't you hang on after this is over, and
okay.
because I'm not sure I completely understand what you're trying to do. I just want to make sure, but we'll talk about that if we have at the
Sure.
end.
No, the thing is
If you
just,
don't mind.
yeah, sure. I'll explain in detail what exactly I want. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Excellent. All right. So Sagoon, is that? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You had a question?
Yes. Um, how to post feedback?
Feedback on assignments?
Yeah.
That's something you're going to do when you are in the grading workflow. We actually have like the annotate feature is part of that. Let me see if I have something I can show you real quickly. But we do actually have a whole other workshop on that. So let me see if I got something, if I can get there. I don't know if there's anything in here. Yeah. So what you can do is you can click in your grade now, and right here you'll get this little grade and feedback window.
Oh, I see.
If you have like a paper that's been turned in or something, you can also enter into the grading workflow, which is offers a lot more tools for you to give feedback to your students. You can add comments, things like that.
Okay.
And as I said, we have a whole dedicated workshop for that, which is coming up, I believe, next month. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to sign up. Also, if you would like to set up an appointment with somebody in CITL, we can certainly have someone walk you through that kind of stuff. So
Okay. Thank you.
let us know. Yep, we're more than happy to help.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let me see, where was I at? We did total points. Okay, so one thing now, right? And I'm just going to go back to my total points calculation. Well, actually, tell you what. We're going to create another calculation. This time we're going to drop our lowest score. Now you can only drop one score at this point. We've asked them to actually like create a function that allows, similar to original, where you can drop more than one score. They have told us they're looking into it, but they haven't actually given us a timeline as to when they're going to do that. But this is kind of the workaround in the meantime, right? So first thing I'm going to do is name my calculation. Again, points. Now this time, to create a drop lowest, right, I don't need to use my categories, but it's a little more convenient, right? So to make a drop lowest calculation, the first thing I want to do is click on my total, and then I'm going to decide, what I'm going to drop my lowest score from. So I'm just going to stick with my homework example. Okay, so I'm choosing my homework category, right? And then now what I have to do then is I have to build my function. So what I'm going to do is then I'm going to take a total of my homework, and then I'm going to subtract, okay? And then again, I'm going to take, and this time I'm going to take the minimum, right? I'm going to ask for it the minimum. So this time I'll put in the minimum. And again, just like my total, I need to select minimum of what. And so I come down here to homework, boom, I click save. And there you go. What I've done is I've created a calculation that drops my lowest homework score. And you can see that when I click save, it showed me that this was a valid expression. Now you do not need to, I'm going to get rid of this for a second. You do not need to use categories, right? You can use just, we'll say these top three just to make it easy. And I'm going to save that, and you see I just saved that quickly just to show you that if you try to save something that's not right, it will turn red and tell you you've got a problem so you can fix it. So in this case, I need to add my, oops, I've got my operator. I take that out, let me put it back in. And this time I'm going to subtract my minimum again, but this time what I'm going to do is when I come to select, I need to make sure that I select those same 3 assignments, right? So all I've done is created essentially a drop lowest score without using a category, right? Again, I click save. It tells me that I'm valid. All right, so that's a quick drop lowest score. I'm going to pop back over here. Any questions about that particular function? All right, cool. Moving on to the extra credit. Let me get rid of these just to show you how to do it. Okay, as I said, you have to use total points because if you don't use total points, you would have to add your extra credit column as part of your 100% allocation, and that isn't actually extra points. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to first oh yeah, so to add this extra credit column, okay, it's the thing about the extra credit column is that a lot of times you have to add the points manually, but all you're going to do is create an item, okay? And this time you'll come in here. I'm adding, this time I'm not going to add calculation, I'm going to actually add an item, right? I'm going to call this extra credit. I fingered that one. Let's make it visible. And I'm actually going to take away the due date here. All right, again, I want to see this is, I'm grading and I'm grading using points, except now what I want to do is I want to come in here and take out that default 100 and replace it with a 0. Okay, I would want to, now see, I should have created a extra credit category. I'm going to put use the new category one, but what I should have done is go to my gradebook and create a new category. I'll show you that in a second. And create an extra credit category. That's how I would do this so that I could put in my extra credit points. But once you have this set to 0, all you got to do is save it. And now, anytime to add the extra credit, you're going to have to add the points manually. So all you have to do is come in here and add points. Let's say I offered 5 extra credit points and post it. Okay, and now what you see is you've got a column that is worth 0 points, right? But you've actually added 5 points. Now the trick here is that you have to come back to your total points column and make sure, right? Because this is our, and I'm going to create a total points column for our, I'm going to change this around, okay? So my total points column this time is going to be everything, all right? So this time when I do it, I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to click on my extra credit because I want to make sure that that column is included, right? And I'm just select everything. And what this is it creates total points. And you get the idea. All right, and what I've done now, oops, is essentially I have created a total column that is all the coursework in my course plus the extra credit that is all added together, okay? And by creating that extra credit column that is worth 0 points, any points I add to that are going to be on top of the total, okay? Now, as I mentioned earlier, this total points thing only works if your overall grade, whoops, is weighted correctly. So if you want to use extra credit and you've created your total points column, you're going to have to come in here to our overall grade. And now this time, right, for my categories, what I want to do is I'm going to need to grade item weights. And I need to find my total, yeah, here's my total points right at the top. And I'm going to need to weight my total points is 100 and then everything else is 0. I'm not going to do that now because it's going to take too long and I just don't want to take the time. But the reason you have to do that, right, is because you want your overall grade to be the total points. So that means that you have to make your overall grade, you have to weight your total points column as 100% of the overall grade. Now that's fine because you have added all the other points in your calculation, so you will be fine. But kind of that's how it's done. It's not the best solution, but it does work. And as I said, we have asked them to create this sort of extra credit function, so it's going to be easier going forward. But right now, they don't have that yet. It is not something that's available, so you kind of have to use that workaround. And they have not given us a timeline again as to when it might be available, but when it is, we will let you guys know. All right, so all right, so do I have, oh, Sagun, I have another question, or was that from earlier?
It was from earlier, but I have one question.
Sure.
Like how to transfer all the grades into my NIU?
Okay, that again is something that we do offer help for at the end of the year. But to do that, what you're actually going to do here, let me pop back over here. That is something you actually do, I believe, through the course tools, right? If I am correct, you go to tools and there's this grade submission tool. That's what you're going to use.
Okay. And then can you show me like further?
I really can't because I am not able to submit grades.
Oh, okay. That's right.
But we do at the end of the year, we offer several workshops and open labs and hours and stuff for people who need help submitting their grades to MyNIU. So please reach out to us and we can go through that with you.
Okay.
Be happy to either set up an appointment to work with you one-on-one, or like I said, we do have a few like open labs and demonstrations around finals time for people to with help submitting grades.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
Okay, any other questions? Let me hop back over here.
No.
No? All right, well, we do have just a couple of more minutes. So if anybody has any other questions about using the Blackboard Gradebook, please let me know. I'm happy to hang out here and talk. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.